Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the 2021 Technology Forum. Our next session is with AFNOR, and it's one that I know several of us are very interested in hearing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Raul Rivas from AFNOR to speak to our and bring in our next presenter. So Raul. I think
my colleague.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. Do we hear? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Our next presenter is my colleague Jean-Marc Hubert. So, thanks. Why not? So we have in the next. Yeah.
I think if you mute the room in Berlin, that would help.
I think the room is on mute.
I mean, sorry, turn off the speakers in that room. That's what I meant. Or you can use the Berlin mic as well.
So okay, now I think it's working. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now. Very good.
No, try again. Now you can hear us.
Yes, we can hear you. It's good.
Okay, sorry.
That's
So
okay.
I was saying, our next presenter is my colleague Jean-Marc Hubert. Jean-Marc is our IT security manager at AFNOR. He will talk about the cyber attack which suffered last February. As I said yesterday, this year for us, it was not only the pandemic, but also this attack. This is something that could have happened to any of us. I think even with the most sophisticated IT security. So from AFNOR perspective, we would like to share our experience, an experience that you don't wish to anyone, but an instructive one, which probably can help you, any of you to avoid this nightmare in your company. So, Jean-Marc, c'est à vous.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you all for having me. I guess you made the introduction I wanted to do, so I will get straight to the point. So I will start by telling you how it happened. So it was February the 18th. There was a text to Frédéric. Frédéric is our CEO. So he received a text on his phone. Frédéric, we may have a situation, files of .ryk extension. Is that around somewhere? And 10 minutes later, I received a phone call from Frédéric, who told me we were under attack and that he comes back right now. And when I say he comes back from his vacation. So when your CEO tells you that he comes back from vacation, you know that something's quite wrong. And indeed, 10 minutes later, there was a COMEX decision to shut down all the IT completely. And the use of professional equipment, phones and workstation were completely prohibited. Well, so what now? We are back to Stone Age, no use of any technical materials. So what do we do now? First of all, we have to summon all the IT department staff on site. I remind you that this was February, so completely in the pandemic situation. Most of people were at home, so we summoned everyone on site, set up a crisis management room. We also decided on a principle that was very important after all, that role takes precedence over rank. That means that, for example, myself, I wasn't at the time a manager. I was just the security manager, but I had no team and I was not at the same rank as the team managers at the IT. But I was the crisis manager along with the CTO, and I had to manage all the IT team during the crisis. That was very important to ensure that the response was efficient. We set up operational crisis unit within the IT department. We met at first 3 times a day. That's a lot, too much, 2 times a day. So in French, we say, on apprend en marchant. So we learn as we go. And then we reduced it as we went along. Frédéric and I reported to the COMEX twice a day for 1 month. That's a lot, including the pressure you may imagine, and including weekends, 2 times a day, including weekends during 1 month, and then once a day. Sorry. So, crisis units, decision-making with the COMEX and myself, operational crisis unit within the IT department, and an operational unit by business unit. And they were on site despite the COVID context. We had to make mandatory notifications. The day of the attack, we called the ANSI. The ANSI is the National Agency for Cybersecurity. We had to file our insurance claim. That was a good thing, we had insurance. The day after, we had to tell the CNIL. The CNIL is the Agency for GDPR. Personal data protection, also file a complaint at the police station, and 2 weeks later we had to file another complaint at an office specialized in cybercrime. And as I said before, that was a crisis within a crisis, the pandemic background. On the one hand, that was an aggravating factor, of course, because it was very difficult to alert employees. It was complex to set up alternate communication systems. We had to be careful of preventing clusters in on-site reunions, and employers had their morale quite already affected. That's something that comes along with that. On the other hand, that was a facilitating factor because people already are organized to work remotely. They are used to use their personal internet access and so on. So it was maybe more aggravating, but sometimes it could be facilitating. Well, when you face that kind of crisis, and you are either the CISO or CIO, everybody turn back on you, and everybody, they have their own concerns. The COMEX, the executive committee, they say, well, what's happening? Is it going to last 1 day, 2, 3 at most? In fact, it lasted more than 3 months. You have the business units. They want to know how they respect their engagements, meet their customer commitments. You have human resources. What do we do with the employees? Do they stay at home? Do they come at work? What are they going to do? You have the CFO. How do we pay them? How do we pay our employees? The attack occurred on the 18th. So we had almost 10 days to find a solution. How do we pay our suppliers? The communication department who said, what do we say to our employees? What do we say to our partners, clients, suppliers? What do we say publicly? And of course, the employees themselves say, how do we work? So you have to answer all of these questions at the same time. What happened to us? If you see right behind me, that's the same. That's this guy, meet Ryuk. Ryuk, I don't know if you know him. It's I was said it's from a manga. It's the god of death, and he has a small book. You can see Death Note, and if you every name in his book, he will take care of. So by chance, we had access to his book, and we saw that there was a couple of companies, so Prasteria, a couple of hospitals, and there was the AFNOR group. And that's why we were attacked, because we were in his diary. So what happened precisely? The attack started February the 16th in the morning. It was quite very quick. It was a phishing email. So the hackers sent a phishing email to a generic mailbox. By generic, I mean something like contact@afnor.org or supplies@afnor.org and so on. So generic mailbox. The guy behind the mailbox clicked on the activation link, and that was all that the hacker needed, just one click. And from now on, the hacker had access to the workstation of the guy and connected by VPN to our network. And then he did some scanning, lateralization, privilege escalation. He set up a tunnel to his computer's command and center, and he took control of the domain after just 1 day and a half. And then he could do whatever he wanted. So he deployed Ryuk. First time it was killed by our antivirus, good thing. However, he was controlling the domain, so he just deactivated the antivirus, and then game over. It took a few hours just to deploy it on our entire network. What were the impacts? But first, our Active Directory was destroyed. Exchange encrypted. Almost all Windows operating systems were also encrypted. However, our Linux operating system was safe, as our backups. I must say that the last two items we didn't know until 3 weeks. So during the first 3 weeks, we had a lot of pressure because we didn't know if we can go along and just get our data back. We decided to shut down the entire IT, so we lost everything that could help us communicate. We use IP phones, so they were off, messaging, chat, website, nothing, just a paper and a pencil. We also asked our employees not to use their workstation, not ask, forbid them. So we had to analyze every last one of them to know where the virus, how far it went. And it took us 2 to 4 weeks to analyze every workstation. That means more than 1,000 workstations. The good news was there is no evidence of data leakage. Now we can say we are quite sure there was no data leakage because this type of attack is not coherent with data leakage. We monitored the dark web. There was no sign of any data selling concerning AFNOR. The timing of the attack also points to the same conclusion that they did not get any data. What now? How do we make our business going? How can we turn the IT back on? How can we recover our data? What do we say? That's all the questions we have to answer very, very quickly and under pressure. So first of all, setting up a business continuity, that's our main purpose. So before the attack, we had an existing bulk SMS system. Hopefully, that was the only way we had to communicate with our employees because we don't have any phone, okay? No phone, no chat, nothing. Sometimes managers do have personal cell phone numbers, but that's all we could use. So the bulk SMS system was very helpful at that moment. Our CIO, our CTO, had a very good idea a few weeks before the attack. We had a website dedicated to crisis communication that we used for the pandemic, and he chose to outsource it, and we did it 1 week before being infected with Riot. So we used that a lot to communicate with our employees. We told them about the website with the SMS system, and then they could connect, and we kept them informed that way. 3 days after that, we set up an alternate messaging system. If you had communication with us during that period, you saw it. We bought a new domain name, afnorx.org, so we could start again communications with partners, clients, suppliers, and so on. We bought 4G routers to be able to access internet, to communicate within the crisis teams. We got all our incoming calls, phone calls to an external call center, and after a week, we set up a shared file system in the cloud, and we implemented a new AFNOR.org to tell the world that we were back on. It was a small website, but that's the purpose was to say that we are still there. Okay, the saving tool, that was the cell phone. That was our only way to communicate. We used it to share connections, set up discussion groups within crisis units. Every manager had a group with his team. Really, that was a saving tool at that moment. On the other side, there's a threat, because when you want to set up to continue the business, the only way to do it is with your personal equipment. Remind you that we forbid everyone to use their professional computers and phone, so personal computer, and of course they use cloud applications like drives or Slack or websites. Everything was on the cloud. So now we have to, there's work to do to get everything back under control, every application back into the IT, and to keep AFNOR data outside of our control, out of control. Security control. First of all, maybe I forgot to mention that we were assisted in the first day with threat responding team. We had a contract with them prior to the attack, and they were they brought a lot of help. Without them, it would have been quite impossible to be back so soon. So they worked very hard to assess the damages, and that's crucial to do it very quickly, because you have to know the scale of the damages before going back online, before restart the IT systems, because you have to be sure that everything is clean before connecting anything. So you have to know the full attack scheme prior to remediation, and you have to be very efficient. I told about more than 1,000 workstations. They brought a tool made especially to analyze every workstation, every server, to be sure that the virus was either absent or destroyed. And last result was to use our backups to restore servers or workstations. So the remediation, we had to set up a new infrastructure. to install, test every system on the new infrastructure. The servers that could not be cleaned were to be restored from backups. And then we had to restart all our applications, synchronize them, test them. It's not just a matter of switching a button on off. It's just a lot of work of synchronizing everything in the information system. That was quite very long process to manage. The thing is, with the applications, the business applications, someone had to choose which to prioritize. So that's when the executive committee came in. That's not for the IT to decide. So they had to decide which tools had to come back first. So they chose the applications that deliver services to our clients, then the accounting tools, then the HR management tools. And yes, we managed to pay our employees at the end of the month. Also, we implemented monitoring indicator to report every day, twice a day, to the executive committee, number of PC servers, applications, decontaminated, restored, reinstalled, remediated, and so on. About communications, after around 24 hours, rumors started on the web, Twitter, Facebook. People were saying, oh, no sign of AFNOR, maybe it's a ransomware. And people kind of started making jokes, haha, AFNOR, ISO 2701, haha, you got pwned. Well, so we gave an official position 3 days after the attack, and we were completely transparent about that, and we assumed that we were completely down. Our community manager did a fantastic job with humor and humility, and everyone on the social networks were quite understanding of our situation. At first, they were, like I said, quite. There was mockeries. You say that, mockery, and they made fun of us. But after that, they were quite comprehensive. Communication with employees. We of course, we try to communicate very frequently with the employees, but now I can say that when you are in the heart of the battle of the fire, it's just not enough. It's just never enough. So if it happens to you, you have to communicate very, very frequently, more than you think, because people don't know what happened. They are completely cut off from everything, and you can never communicate too frequently. We try to associate them into operations. For example, for the workstation analysis, we ask everyone who wanted to help to come here and organize the logistics of having 1,000 workstations come back and be analyzed and be restored if needed. And as I said, we had an issue about paying salaries, but that went well. About communication with clients, suppliers, partners, our first instinct was to protect them. That's why we shut down the IT as soon as we knew that we were we had a ransomware, because we did not want it to go to their own IT. We tried to inform everyone as we could, as much as we could. And then as we restored our IT, we tried to reassure everyone. I made a lot of phone calls to NISO to explain them how our alternate IT systems like AFNOR-X.org was secured, and then explain them how we engage our remediation, and to reassure them that our new infrastructure was safe. and that we could do business again. What worked for us after all? Like I said, assume the problem. It happens to a lot of major companies, so it's okay. And I must say that the vast majority of our clients were very comprehensive about the situation. So remain humble and transparent. I'm sorry, PowerPoint just crashed. No, it's not my fault, it's Bill Gates' fault. Just 1 second. Share it again. Okay, do you see that? It's okay? Did it come back?
It's okay, but we're on the presentation side, I think.
Yes. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I wanted to give feedback zooming on particular aspects. First, the human factor. During the cyber attack, we faced very strong human resources issues. During the first few days, everybody was stunned. Then we witnessed a surge of solidarity from the employees. Everybody wanted to help. They not found us, but they told us, how can I help? I don't have anything to do. So if you want to use me, use me. So, and we use them for the workstation analysis, for example. Then exhaustion, fatigue, and then sometimes irritation because it lasted quite long. A lot of people, and not only the IT team, work during weekends with a 24-hour focus. During the first night, I dreamed about the cyber attack. Of course, we had a very strong pressure on the teams to get everything back to normal as soon as possible. And the pressure was particularly strong on the IT department, but not only, because in the business units, everybody worked as they try to replace our applications, so they work manually, if you know what I mean. Something interesting is that personalities reveal themselves, because under pressure, there are people who are large team manager, who became just transparent. They didn't know what to do. And on the opposite, there were guys like the new guy that were hired a couple of weeks ago. He was very motivated, very helpful, a lot of ideas, and he wanted to help. Well, so personalities change in that kind of situation. We faced a big challenge was to keep the morale up. It lasted a long time, 3 months, and in addition to the COVID context, which already affected the morale for employees. And employees, of course, they felt left out because we told them not to use their professional equipment. So they didn't know what to do. They were at home. Most of them were at home without any means of working, not many communications. We communicated a lot, but not so much. So they felt, some of them felt left out. So it's very important to increase the communication. And it's very important to recognize all the efforts that were made during the time afterwards. With the CEO and business units, the CEO support is essential, and we had it. It's essential, especially because all the business units wanted to start their business again. That's of course natural, but when you are the IT, you face all your business units that all want to grab you and make you work on their specific area. So the CEO chose to make the executive committee accountable, and so they had to choose the priority, and then the IT department just applied it. And despite that, of course, and every single one of them came to us asking to make exceptions to help them to restore one or two applications before the others and so on. So it's very difficult to deal with that because there is human relation with them, and it's very difficult to say no when all you want is to help everyone. An interesting effect was the anniversary effect. Our CEO, and at first we were faced with that decision. He said, after 7 days, I want the website back. Okay, so we organized ourselves to do that. And after 1 month, he said, I want internet to come back. No, not that was not that was the local network to come back. 1 month because it's anniversary date. And 3 months after that, he said, after 3 months, I want the remediation to be finished. So that's, if it happens to you, maybe you can anticipate what I call the anniversary effect. The crisis manager, as I said, we were two to assume that role, the CTO and myself. The roles are many. You have to manage people, to coordinate, to steer, to lead, to mobilize everyone, to explain what's happening, what you're doing, translate from the technical to the managers, to the top management, synthesize. That's a lot of different roles. You have to buffer the pressure, and especially that's very important, not to pass the pressure on the teams. I mean the technical teams. They already suffered the attack. Their networks, their servers were completely destroyed. So that affects them a lot. And most of them feared that they could be fired for that. So they just couldn't take any more pressure. So we had to keep the pressure at our level and not pass it below. So of course you have to be, the crisis manager has to be aware of the pressure, be aware of tiredness, fatigue. His time is very, very, very precious. You don't have time to do anything other than what I said, manage, coordinate, and attending committees, reunions. You have to surround yourself with people and delegate as much as possible. In our case, we had one employee dedicated as a PMO and one other employee who had to gather feedback for what I'm doing right now. And during the crisis, we had no time or energy to waste. We have to be efficient and realize our efficient people first. If people is not efficient, like I said, there was a team manager that just couldn't find his place in the crisis organization. You have to tell him to go home. We don't need you right now. We'll need you afterwards, but right now we have to focus. We have to be efficient. And at last we were two, and that was, after all, a very, very good idea, because you cannot be 100% efficient during 3 months dealing with a crisis of that scale. I wanted to share with you a graph published by the Montaigne Institute in France about cybercrime and ransomware. This graph is very, very relevant. The timing is, I must say that it just perfectly fits with what happened to us. That's 3 days of how do you say, you are stunned for 3 days, crisis during 3 weeks, 1 month, and 3 months of remediation and to get back to normal. That was very useful for communication. I don't know if you remember, but at first the COMEX asked us how long it will last, 1 day, 2 days. So it was quite helpful to have that to explain that's okay, that it will last several weeks, several months, and it's the same for everyone. So that was quite helpful to justify that. And what's fun is quite inversely proportional to the pressure. Let me show you something. The first days, everybody asks what happened, when does it come back? So you have a lot of pressure. And during 1 month, everyone, thank you for what you're doing. They all say, thank you, with your work, we get through this, we are with you, how come we up, and so on. And after 1 month, 1 month and a half, people went, okay, that's okay, but now we would like to work, so please do something, it's late now. The assets that have been valuable for us. Okay, I'm from AFNOR, so I will talk about ISO, of course. The fact that we manage information security with the 2701, our risk analysis pointed out that the ransomware attack was the major risk, so we were good. We subscribed cybersecurity insurance 1 year before the attack, and we're quite happy, I must say, about that. We had outsourcing. Well, we had outsourced the communication with employees with the SMS bulk system and the website I told you about. And we had awareness, security awareness in the month before. So obviously it did not prevent the click on the email, but it makes it easier for people to understand what we were doing during the remediation. And quite almost all security measures that we set up since the attack were already identified in the risk analysis. So it was easier for us to deploy them. Very valuable, as I said, the incident response unit. We had a contract with them, so we could call them immediately, and they came the same day on site. Conclusion is the crisis is always worse than expected. And I told with a lot of CISO of other companies that were attacked and that suffered ransomware, the conclusion is always the same. It's worse than you can expect. Okay, I said, do you have any questions? But I will. It's easier if I ask the question myself. So there are 3 questions that I hear often. So the first one is, do you think, or do you know if you were a target? No, we were not a target. We were in the same wave of attack that the hospitals in France that were attacked a few days before. I think Soprasteria too. So you remember that's the Ryuk right here, the Ryuk diary. So we were not specifically targeted. They just launched the phishing emails and they wait for you to click, and oh, AFNOR clicked, so we're going to pawn AFNOR. Okay. Do you know who perpetrated the attack? Yes, actually we do. But it's UNC 1878. But that's all I can tell, and that's all the French authority know about them. They don't know specifically who they are. A couple of guys from different countries. They don't really know which countries, so don't know much about them. And how much was the ransom? I'm sorry to disappoint, but nobody knows. And when I say nobody knows, nobody knows. We don't know, but UNC 1878, they don't know, because we didn't activate the ransom link, and we did not establish any communication with them. So they didn't have to estimate how we could pay. So they never asked themselves how much they will ask. So nobody knows, and nobody will never know until the next time. Okay, I'm finished. If you have any question, feel free. Raul, your mic is off.
No, I think it's on. No?
Now it's on.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Jean-Marc. Actually, it was really interesting sharing this. I live it myself, so I can say that it wasn't funny at that time. Now it's a little bit funny, all this experience. I remember just sharing all the information via WhatsApp with different colleagues and different groups. We were working actually via WhatsApp and LinkedIn and personal emails. So at that time, it wasn't funny. We have some questions, and I think we have some time to answer that. But especially about the policy that AFNOR have regarding the paying of communication or negotiation with the hackers. Did you ever? Well, I think you just answered that. You never talk to them, or we were never aware of the quantity that they were asking. So. But AFNOR even like consider pay something or not at all?
In fact, we didn't. We refused to ask ourselves this question before knowing if our backups were safe or not. And as soon as we knew they were okay, we didn't even consider paying anything. So the question answered itself. And we know we didn't have any contact with them. When we saw the office specialized in cybercrime, they they told us that sometimes they can impersonate us to contact the hackers to try to get information, but they were not available at that moment because they were helping the hospitals that had the ransomware too. So we were on our own, if you can say that. But so we never because if you at the moment that you click on the ransom note, the death note of Ryuk, you just tell the hackers that they can ask for the ransom, and they will start the clock. And most of the time they say, okay, you have 48 hours to pay, or it will be the double, and so on, so on. So we didn't click. We just only wanted to assess the damages on the IT.
Okay. Okay, the first question I have, did you spend a lot of effort diagnosing where you were leading up to the attack? Was that easy to recall?
Diagnosing where you were leading up to the attack? I'm not sure I get that. Diagnosing where you were leading up to the attack? I'm not sure I understand the question.
I mean, probably just tracking the attack. I don't know who.
Tracking the attack.
Yeah.
Just the forensic, all the forensic that we had to do.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a lot of effort, and that was with the team that came to help us. There were 2 on site and 4 or 5 people off site that spent days and weeks to analyze systems. They gave us a tool that grab technical data on servers. We had to get one system back at a time, of course disconnected from everything, get the tool on it, extract the data, send them to the team, they analyze, and they get back to us. And as I said, there were hundreds of servers. And so that's a relative work to do, and it requires specialists to do that. And yes, that was 3 months, 3 weeks, sorry. 3 weeks just to get a thorough picture of what happened.
Okay. Another important question, I think, did you ended up creating more barriers between system, or could that be a step backwards?
Yes, we set up a lot. Backwards, no, because quite as I said, every new security measures that we set up after the attack were already identified. So we just had to do it in 3 months instead of 3 years. But yes, a lot more bias. Yes.
2 questions. I think this one is important as well. People are asking about the recovery plan. If we have not had a recovery plan before the attack, or it just, as you said in French, we learn by walking.
I'd like to share with you, I don't know if to say anecdote, if it's okay in English, just a small story. I arrived at AFNOR in October 2020, so 4 months before the attack. Frédéric, the CTO, told me that I should go to the executive committee to explain what a ransomware is and to set up a plan, a recovery plan, how to deal, how to prevent ransomware. So I did it. I went to the executive committee. Hello, my name is Jean-Marc. I'm the new security manager. Here's the ransomware does that. It's very important to do that. You have to make recovery plans and so on and so on. And you have, I guess it would be a good idea to do an exercise in a few months and test our recovery plan. Of course, they were quite happy with the exercise that happened in February. So there was, we were not really prepared for that. We have a business continuity plan, not a technical continuity plan ongoing, but a global recovery plan, not really. I would say specific local recovery.
Okay.
Many specific local recovery, but it worked quite well after all.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. I think people are asking about the money. Do you actually have a potential loss of this magnitude insurance through the cyber insurance, or was the insurance sum in the end rather than drop in the ocean?
We are still in the process of discussing with the insurance, so I cannot share with you any amount. No, I don't think it will be a drop. The insurance, I hope, will be a significant help for us. Of course, it will not cover everything, of course, but it will cover some of it. And honestly, I can't say more. I don't know more. This is still under analysis and under discussion, and it's a very complicated exercise. We have experts from both sides, many meetings with them. They confront their positions. We have to provide a lot of documents to prove something, to explain that this is part of the attack or not. It's a long, long process, but I'm confident that this will lead to something fair.
Positive, I would say. Yeah, okay. Again, thank you so much, Jean-Marc, for this sharing. So I will pass to Lakshmi from Berlin to Philadelphia, and thank you for the next team.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jean-Marc. Thank you, Raul, for moderating. This was a very much anticipated session for everyone. We do have several more questions, Jean-Marc, so we will follow up with you separately. And then we will post these answers to the questions to those who asked them, because this was really a very insightful presentation. I think as we talk about technology and technology implementation, cyber attacks are definitely something we have to keep in the forefront of our mind. What a horrifying experience, and it was so gracious of AFNOR to share with us this experience, because we can then all take this experience back to our respective IT teams and really make sure that we have the right steps in place to prevent something of this magnitude from happening to each of us. So thank you very much. What a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next session, I think, is quite timely. It's a NISO update, and given Harold's presentation this morning with regards to REC-IF and the NISO compatibility issues, I think it's going to be great to hear from NISO, and ASME is going to moderate that session. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Robert Wheeler.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to introduce B. Tommy Usden, who is president of Mulberry Technologies, Inc., a consultancy specializing in XML for prose documents. Ms. Usden has been working with generic markup since 1985 and has been a supporter of XML since 1996. She chairs Balisage, the markup conference, which is a spectacular conference, and is a frequent speaker at JazzCon, Markup UK, and other conferences. Ms. Usden has developed DTDs, schemas, and XML, SGML application frameworks for applications in academia, government, and industry. Projects include reference materials in medicine, science, engineering, and law, semiconductor documentation, standards, historical and archival materials, and textbooks. Distribution formats have included print books, magazines, and journals, both web and media-based electronic publications. She is co-chair of NISO Z3996, JATS, Journal Article Tag Suite Working Group, and is a member of the NISO STS Standing Committee and the BITS Committee. Tommy?
Thank you, Robert. I think I want to share my screen, and it's letting me. Okay. I am here to give you an update on NISO STS. But before I dive into the details of that, I want to tell you a story. Because I've been listening to this conference for the last 2 days. And I want to tell you about once upon a time, that's the way the story needs to start. Once upon a time, and not all that long ago, when the World Wide Web was new and shiny, there was a young technology executive at a large publishing company. You've all heard of them. This is a company that published mostly books and loose leaf services. One day, the technology executive called an all-hands meeting to share the good news that electronic distribution was the future of electronic publishing. People would subscribe to websites that were constantly updated instead of getting packets of pages in the mail and manually replacing those pages in their loose leaf books. He was right. The first publisher who got a great web interface for their products and services was going to be way ahead of their competition, and they were going to be that industry leader. From now on, all IT resources would be devoted to developing a new future-facing web-based system that would delight their customers and make them leaders in the new publishing paradigm. It was going to take about 2 years if they devoted all resources to the project. So all current development projects, which were really just tweaks to the legacy system, were going to be dropped, and no new requests related to legacy systems would be entertained. They were facing the future, not the past. The room went silent for a really long time, until the CEO stood up and said, I would like you to give that presentation again, except instead of talking about legacy systems, I would like you to call them revenue systems, and explain to us how we are going to go 2 years or more without any maintenance on our revenue systems while we build this future system. I tell you about this because I want you to think of NISO STS as the revenue system, not the future system. I'll talk a bit about that more at the end of my presentation. But because of the big focus at this meeting today about the future systems, I'm not saying they're not important. I'm not saying they're not cool. I'm saying that's not what I'm talking about right now. STS does not address many of the shiny new requirements that you have discussed in this meeting. Excuse me, let me make that go away. Okay, so let's talk about NISO STS. What is it? It's an XML tag set for standards documents. It was published in 2017. It was based on ISO STS, which a bunch of you have probably heard of. And it is backwards compatible with ISO STS and has all the baggage that comes with being backwards compatible. This is the way the world is. There are 2 versions, the interchange version and an extended version with some additional features that are useful for people to use for production purposes. NISO STS 1.0 is being adopted. The biggest test of any standard is anybody using it? I don't care how terrific the standard is. If nobody's using it, nobody cares. It is being adopted. Here is what I believe to be a partial list of people who are using it. Why are they using it? Because they want to interchange. Because SDOs and NSBs have the same customers and the same resellers and the same partners, and they use the same tools and they use the same service vendors. And they need discovery, which works across multiple publishers, and they need accessibility, and they need multiple formats because you need to cooperate. It is the experience of these users that is driving the current set of change. NISO STS is in continuous maintenance. The first update is in process. It is my opinion this is and will be the most significant update to NISO STS. It is significant because although it is based on and backwards compatible with ISO STS, this is the first time that we have users outside the ISO ecosystem looking at this XML structure. It was developed by ISO. It was used at ISO. ISO's associated standards bodies, but not just that. Vendors, tools, an enormous number of people who work within the ISO rules had already been working with and stretched the boundaries on ISO STS. But when you bring in a new community, where you have new tools, new vendors, new workflows, new requirements, new expectations, they've just hit it. So NISO STS 1.1 is on the way. The standing committee finished making decisions about requests for the first draft in September. There is now available the committee draft of the first version of NISO STS 1.1. In February or thereabouts, the subcommittee is going to decide whether to nominate this current draft to become NISO STS 1.1 or to go for another draft. If they decide to go forward, if and only if they decide to go forward, you may see a NISO STS 1.1 in June 2022. For those of you who have been calling me and saying, I need it right now, the answer is it's a standard. And there is no right now. Sorry, guys, doesn't work like that. STS is complicated, and there is a standard. It would surprise me very much if anyone were able to read the standard and nothing else and be able to make STS work. There's an enormous amount of support materials at a place called NISO-STS.org, which are designed to make it possible for people to actually use this thing. I'm going to take a couple of minutes now to show that to you. Can you see it? Okay, so we have, for those of you who are familiar with the site, you'll notice we have some new box text. This box stuff is saying, you can look at the draft of the next one. Comments are welcome. We have links to the STS spec, and the standard. We have links to NISO where it's maintained, to the standard, to documentation for it, to sample standards, to the grammars, DTDs, XSDs, and RNGs, so that you can actually use it in a tool. Because if you can't use an XML vocabulary in one of your tools, you're really not accomplishing anything. Let me show you a little bit of the user documentation. We have a getting started section, shows you how to use it. Some cool diagrams that show you how things are organized, which many users find is a good way to sort of learn how the spec works. For each element, we have a page with a bunch of information about it, tagged samples, content models, the description that is in the standard, and a whole bunch of other stuff, advice, because the standard doesn't contain advice, the standard only contains rules, but you probably want some of this advice. We have links all over the where. We even have sections. Common tagging practice. How do we think you should do this? Descriptions of it. There's a whole lot of stuff here. It is intended to be helpful to people who are actually trying to create documents using this tag set. If you have questions about it when we get to the end, I'll be happy to show you anything, describe anything, but I'm going to get back to my slides. So we have these user materials. But the exciting thing is the next version. What are we going to have in it? New metadata, enhancements based on use, and keeping up with JETs. Right now, you can look at the first draft. Emphasis, draft. There is no guarantee that anything in this draft is going to be there in the new version. Once we make a 1.1, we have committed that it will be backwards compatible with NISO STS 1.0, which is backwards compatible with ISO STS 1.1 and therefore 1.0. But this draft may change. It's available. There's a user documentation, what we call a tag library. There are DTDs, XSDs, and RNGs, and there is a change description, which tells you all the things that got added. Comments are welcome. This is not yet a draft standard for comment, so we don't have an official place for you to put the comments, but we've got a discussion list and we'd really like to know what you think. There's going to be new metadata about the file. At the beginning of the document, this is not metadata about the document contents. This is metadata about the XML. This says, what tag set did you use? Did you extend it in any way? Did you restrict it following any rules? And is there any special custom metadata you want? Anything you want to tell us about the making of the document? Where is it in the review process? What data conversion vendor worked on it? I don't know what you want to tell us about the XML document, but you might want to tell us. You might want to tell us that it's an STS document, whether you used interchange or extended, what table model you used. For those of you, I'm getting a little geeky here. We support the two major table models in use in the world, in the XML world. Which one did you use, or did you use both? How did you encode your math? It is a really helpful thing for people who are receiving XML documents to know ahead of time how to process the math. Math is complicated stuff, for goodness sakes. And how did you tag your terminology if you did? Again, we allow two ways to do it. People have firm opinions. The ones who want to use TBX want to use TBX, and the ones who don't want to use it really, really don't want to use it. So we let you do it either way, but we let you tell us up front what you did. We've added a legend to figures, tables, and equations, and a bunch of other stuff, mostly small, that have to do with experience of users. Users who wanted to put keywords in places where we didn't let them. Users whose processes are developing and evolving as we are writing. ISO now has international harmonized stage codes. We give them a place to put that in the document. We're letting you have more control of the styling of the lists. What do you want your bullets to look like, or your numbers? That kind of stuff. Little things that come from use. We're enhancing the term and definition markup. How do you say, how do you stick extra text into a term display, for example? We've added a new term type, translation. We've added a new grammatical gender, masculine hyphen feminine. We've added a new way, custom values for places where we have set value lists, where the vocabulary says it's going to be one of these things and you can't have any others. Any place where we have it has to be one of these things and you can't have any others, you can now also add a custom. So you can add your own. We don't actually have a model that is color is red, blue, or green, but if we did, the XML would allow you to say your ribbon has a color of red. But you wouldn't have a way to say purple because the vocabulary says you have three choices, red, blue, or green. That's it. So now we've added custom. And what we would say is ribbon color is custom. And the custom type is purple. Because there are a lot of standards organizations and you don't all do things the same way. What not to expect in NISO STS 1.1? Marking up requirements and standards. It's important. It's what you've mostly been talking about for the last 2 days. It's not there yet. You as an industry don't know how you as an industry want to do it. And NISO STS is not going to take the lead on that because a whole bunch of people who are working really hard on it are already there. That's the official line. My personal opinion is it's not going to happen in STS because STS is a prose document-based model. What STS was written for was encoding so that you could publish on print on the web for the disabled, so you can make accessible versions of prose documents, that is words, narrative description. Actionable, machine readable requirements and specifications are a very different thing from paragraphs of words. I don't think we're going to be able to merge those without completely re-engineering STS. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it's not going to start from where we are. Similarly, there are going to be no big changes to the TBX profile. TBX is one of the ways to encode terms and definitions in NISO STS. The profile is significantly different from the TBX standard because it is for prose documents. It has been modified, extended to work with textual documents. In this version, we're making some minor extensions. We're not re-engineering it, we're not redesigning it, and we are not going to make it completely compatible with ISO 30042, because that's for database interchange, not publishing of prose documents. I've pushed through this pretty fast because I'm hoping we're going to get some conversation about it. We do want to hear from you. I'm hoping that these slides are going to be made available to at least the participants here, if not the public? Does anyone know?
This recording will be available to everybody.
And the recording includes the visuals?
Sure does.
Okay, then I'm not going to read these monster URLs, but we want to know what you think about the STS standard. We want to know what you think about the current draft. We have formal places to put those things, or you can just send email to me. I will be happy to discuss this with absolutely anybody. Robert, I don't know where we are in terms of time. Do you want to give the next presentation and then have comments, or do we want to discuss now, or how do you want to handle this?
We have a few questions. Actually, two of them are around RecIF. Let me start with the one that isn't. Tommy, what would an organization do if they wanted to explore creating NISO STS and create a benefits study to pass to executive decision makers?
Oh, wow. I think what you would need to do is you would need to get one of, I'm assuming that it depends whether you're already an XML shop. If you are already an XML shop, then you have the expertise to look at your current workflows and your current XML documents and see how NISO STS would work in that environment and with you, and whether or not it would be, how you would move into it, and whether you would be able to continue to do what you're currently doing and have STS documents. If you are not now XML users, I would say you're going to need to bring some XML publishing person who knows a little something about STS in, talk to them about what your current processes are, what you're hoping to accomplish, and find out what the costs would be if, depending on where in the workflow you were to introduce it. You've also got a bunch of major decisions to make before you can even make that kind of recommendation. Are you going to try to start with XML and STS right up front? Are you going to try to provide, for example, at the extreme, authoring tools for your committees to create your content in STS from the very beginning? That can be done. It's not easy. Are you going to do it at the production stage? Are you going to put it all the way on the back end and make your PDF and HTML websites and then send it to some vendor somewhere to make STS to put into a database somewhere or interchange? Where in the workflow you're going to put it is a big decision and something that you need to think about as you're making those having those thoughts. And if you don't play in the XML world now, you probably need help with that.
Thank you. The next question is, it was concerning to hear that NISO STS is not compatible with RecIF standard used for software, making it difficult to feed content directly into software systems. What are your thoughts around this issue? And I think you touched on this a little bit with why requirements were not in STS at this point, but do you want to speak to that?
I will be happy to expand on that. I think the notion of an XML format that can be used both to make narrative prose documents that look like current standards and that will feed those sorts of systems is really ambitious. I can imagine some ways to do it. They would be an enormous amount of work, both to design and to create the content in. I'm not saying it can't be done. It might be possible to do it. It would certainly be a really fun thing to try to do, but you're not going to achieve it by starting with a specification that was created without that requirement in mind. STS was not written with that requirement, and there isn't a quick patch to put it in. That's just not going to happen. It's not a quick fix. It's not something that we can sort of slap in. It will be hard. It will take designing from the bottom up. And I don't know whether the STS group has the intestinal fortitude to take that on or not, because it would be a really big project. I think it's probably doable, but it's not easy and it's not there. Fair enough?
Yeah. This is also around RecIF, but it's slightly different questions. So I don't think we've heard anything from adopters from industry about these specs directly in the comments that we've looked at for the first draft, but there's RecIF and then there's also RDF. Have you been asked to participate in discussions around this? And I think that may have been mentioned earlier by Todd. There might be an email string going around during this meeting. So you may be invited or you would be invited.
Well, first of all, there's the distinction between Tommy as a human being and NISO STS as an activity. And they're not the same thing at all. There are members of the NISO STS Standing Committee involved in, I believe, both of those activities. So there is awareness, there's cross awareness. Who from the NISO STS committee might most effectively participate in those other activities is not an obvious question. I, for example, bring XML expertise to this activity, but I do not bring standards expertise to it. So depending on who else is participating and whether you've already got XMLers involved, I personally may not be an appropriate or helpful person to invite. On the other hand, I've got a lot of JATS expertise. I know NISO STS, ISO STS, and I think it's a cool activity. So maybe I do want to play, but that doesn't mean that I'm the right person to play. I know that the NISO STS group has overlapping members with the others.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's it for now. If you want to stick around, there might be some more questions in a few minutes.
Sure, because we're going to hear about some cool work you're doing now.
Yes, thank you. Let me. Okay. So that was a bit of a tough act to follow, but we did want to provide an update on some work we're doing for also part of NISO, the NISO Standard Specific Ontology Standard project. We have been here before, excuse me, at the Standards Technology Forum talking about this, which seems appropriate as some of you were there when there was an off-the-cuff comment during one of the presentations at the international meeting in Frankfurt about how a standards ontology would be useful, which eventually became called NISO SSOS. After quite a bit of discussion, again, with some of you, we had two big questions. Can we do it? Avoid boiling the ocean? Can we keep it at a high level, abstract, and not domain specific? And should we? Would it be useful to our end users? And actually, just after submitting the work item proposal to NISO, we asked if we could have a do-over. And it was only then we limited the scope to lifecycle states along with some core defining concepts. So for the benefit of those who have not heard us speak about NISO SSOS, the problem is quite simple. No two standards organizations in the world use the same standards lifecycle states. Imagine what this does to standards users. They need to manage standards from different standards organizations provided by different sources using different terminology to describe similar standards lifecycle states. In the old days, we each had our own experts. They knew what they needed to know and understood our idiosyncrasies. But things are changing, and in reality, continue to change faster. PDF was good for a time, but is nearly digital paper and has been around since 1993. It is entirely document-centric. NISO STS, version 1, released in October 2017, gave us greater access into the content and data of the standards and the markup that goes beyond really just format. I know Tommy said it is for pros, and it is, but we do have the tables, we do have the math. There are foundations beyond just format support, the beginnings of semantics with a greater framework for identification and enhancement. But Tommy has and can speak more eloquent about markup and future-proofing capabilities than me. The conversations we've heard over the last 2 days and few years tell us standards users want more granular access to and usage of the standards, moving toward a goal of becoming data-centric, which could lead to an interesting question of the difference between content and data. I love the fact that the first definition of content in Merriam-Webster is something contained, for example, in a document, whereas data is considered raw and actionable. But that may be talk for another day. NISO SSOS, focused on standards lifecycle in OWL, will allow uniform standards lifecycle description and interpretation from any organization, greatly increasing transparency, interoperability for both standards users and those who sell standards from all their varied sources, and even help align them with internal standards and specifications. The difficulty in doing this, the way things currently are, would exponentially increase when we talk about bits or fragments of standards being used. We defined the standards lifecycle as the sequence of events from the first idea to the ultimate archiving and or withdrawal of a standard. We identified and defined over 70 terms directly related to standards and the ontology. We defined top-level states as in development, active, inactive, and defined numerous second-level states. These standardized states will allow standards organizations to map their proprietary life cycles, states, and their deeper subtasks and processes to NISO SSOS in a manner that will be meaningful to standards end users. We created a representation of the ontology in OWL and a few other technical formats, and we've also described several informative use cases. And here we have a sunburst illustration of the proposed top and second level lifecycle states. And here are a couple illustrations of the OWL object and data properties in the Protégé application, which are the core defining concepts mentioned in the original work item proposal. This is our historic timeline with associated NISO SSOS lifecycle states. In pulling this together, it was striking to note that as much time was spent on the pre-proposal, pre-drafting periods as has been spent on the actual or formal work on the proposed standard. We started the pre-proposal roughly in March 2018 when we began discussion with a number of organizations involved with the standard about the idea of a standards ontology. Firstly, focused on those questions, can we and should we? Then drafting the proposal, which was submitted to NISO late in October, approved in December. We formalized the working group roster and shored up the funding for the project, officially kicking off with the working group in September 2020. And here we have the tentative timeline for NISO SSOS going forward to final approval and publication. We'd like to thank and acknowledge our working group members. It really is a very engaged, good group representing 16 different organizations. We'd also like to thank the organizations who, beyond time spent on the project, also helped fund it. And of course, the support of NISO and its members and Access Innovations acting as secretariat. And that's our update. I don't see any questions. And we are a few minutes over time. So Lakshmi, back to you.
Great, thanks so much, Tommy. Thank you so much, Robert, for that informative session. It certainly segued well with what we heard this morning with Harold and the others on their software updates. So thank you very much for the NISO update. It's great to end our technology forum with that. So with this, I'm going to just share a couple things from my screen if I can. See if this is working. Is it working? Yes. All right, guys. Well, so thank you so much to everyone who stayed and for participating in the 2021 Technology Forum. It is a labor of love for all of us. I want to pay special thanks to our advisory council organizations. If your organization or you know of one that would be interested in supporting our technology forum and participating on our council, please reach out to me. My email is on the website, and we would love to really diversify our technology forum each year. These are our organizers. I would not have been able to do any of this without them. So thank you to all of my organizers that have been on our weekly calls, bi-weekly, sometimes daily, to work on this agenda and for gathering our wonderful speakers and creating such a diverse agenda this year. We've really received so much positive feedback. I want to thank you again for our sponsors. We would not have been able to put this on virtually without you. A lot of effort went into this, so I thank all of you for contributing and being such great supporters of this forum. So just a couple things to wrap up. I don't want to keep you much longer. The sessions are being recorded, as I said, and they're available on the website. So the day one presentations were posted yesterday. The passcode is listed for you there, 2021 at STF. And we are going to be sending out, hopefully, a survey. Leslie and I will be working on that soon to all of you to hear what you might want to talk about next year. So our 2022 forum details are coming. We are looking at a hybrid. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this in person. Thank you to my colleagues in Berlin for getting together and really helping facilitate and coordinate everything with us here in the US. We really appreciate it. And so with that, I say goodbye, and we will see you next year. Bye, Berlin. We miss you.